Right. Good morning. Good morning. Welcome, everybody, to the Saturday Morning Mastermind. I'm your host, Samantha Studebaker Carl. I'm here with my good friend Dan and Catherine. And today we are talking about Chapter 10 of The Soul of Money by Lynne Twist. And this particular chapter is about the power of conversation. And she shares how the conversation that you wrap around whatever subject is what actually shapes that experience in your life. So, but before we get going with this chapter, I want to give my friends an opportunity to jump out and introduce themselves. And for those of you who are watching, click like on this video if you've been liking watching our shows, and comment below to let us know when you watch it. If you'd like to join us, you can visit us in our Facebook group. You can just go to mindsetmasterycollective.com and jump in our Facebook group, add a comment or thought, or say, hey, I want to join you and talk, or, just let us know you've been watching. Okay, jump out, guys.
Hello, this is Catherine Clement in Boulder, Colorado.
Hello, this is Dan Sisek in Las Vegas, Nevada, where we have rain again. And I guess it's going to be like this for a little bit today. So looking forward to the conversation on the book.
There we go. Okay, sorry, I got sidetracked there with the side of the screen. I was trying to expand it and I couldn't get a hold of it. Okay. Okay, so chapter 10, the power of conversation. Let's just read this little excerpt here. It says this is a little excerpt of Intuit Wisdom. Words do not label things already there. Words are like the knife of a carver. They free the idea, the thing, from general formlessness of the outside. As a man speaks, not only is his language in a state of birth, but also the very thing about which he is talking. In this chapter, she shares some really interesting stories in here about how the conversation around subjects actually shapes our experience in life. And I underlined, or let's see, I think I wrote a little something kind of at the beginning of the description for our video this week. Let me just share this. And here was a quote that I got from her. I really love this little excerpt. And she says, we think we live in the world. We think we live in a set of circumstances, but we don't. We live in our conversation about the world and our conversation about the circumstances. When we're in a conversation about fear and terror, about revenge and anger and retribution, jealousy and envy and comparison, then that's the world we inhabit. If we're in a conversation about possibility, a conversation about gratitude and appreciation for the things in front of us, then that's the world we inhabit. And so this chapter, she shows us about how our conversations about money create the reality that we experience. And, and we've talked about this before in other books. And I want to say the main book that we have covered this on is the book called What to Say to Yourself, What to Say When You Talk to Yourself by Shad Helmstetter. And that was a really enlightening book for me as well, because it kind of helps you realize all of this inner chatter that shapes your life. And I want to give you an example, and I've given this example before, but it was a super powerful one for me. And it was when I found out my daughter was pregnant for the first time, and she was talking a lot about moving to South Carolina with her boyfriend to go be near his parents. And some of the first things that I experienced was I experienced this fear that I was never going to see my daughter again. I experienced this, worry that I wasn't going to be able to see my grandchild grow up. I started having these feelings about his family. I never met them, by the way, but I started feeling all these really strong anger, frustration, all of these kind of feelings about his family. And so it was making me angry. It was making me frustrated. It was making me just mad that all these different things. And at the time we were reading that book, and so that I started examining my emotional roller coaster that I was experiencing, and realized all these thoughts that I was saying to myself that was causing me this anxiety and frustration and anger. And when I wrote out a series of statements that I decided I was going to say to myself instead, such as, his family is a loving and wonderful family, and they're going to take great care of them down there. They're going to have wonderful grandparents. My grandchild, I'm going to get to see him as often as I want to go see him. I just started saying all these other things to myself to kind of override the crap that was popping up. And I had this just miraculous experience of completely different emotional response. And for me, I mean, that was a turning point in my life, because I realized that, all of that emotional crap that I was going through was self-inflicted. And when I changed the things I was saying to myself, my emotional state changed, and therefore my whole experience of that whole situation has changed. And what's happened is that, we've become friends with his family. We've gone down there, we visited her as many times as we like to. And I have, sure, I've missed a few things with my grandchildren, but it hasn't been that much. And and we have this whole other family down there that we're connected to now. And that would not have happened had I kept going down the path of all those unpleasant things that I was talking to myself about, that whole conversation that I had created in my mind around that situation. It became different because I changed that conversation. And that's what she's talking about in this chapter, is just changing the conversation that's going on in your head, so that instead of having anxiety and fear and this whole idea of like the scarcity mindset around money, is that you change your attitude to a one of abundance, and then your reality changes. So those are some of the things that I thought of when I first read this. So guys, what did you think of?
It's funny for me because, like you, I went to another one of the books we've done, but it was just a more recent book. But I love the points that you brought out about what to say to yourself when you talk to yourself. That book, because what you just said connects well with, making me remember that, oh, yeah, how I do talk to myself plays the biggest part in how I react and how I um, let things, you know, take precedence in my life and how they can override. But if I can do the intentionality and, change myself personally into looking, like you said, finding the positive things and the things that can be the overriding factor, that can make that change. But the book I kind of went to was the five love languages, because of how we respond and how we look at things, and how money can get in the middle and in the way of even how we deal with each other, with people and our relationships and people and love, and how our own worries and scarcity mindset can play so big into what we do and how we react towards other people. And it you know we don't even realize it. And then it made me really realize that, wow, how I look at money is such an overriding factor in all areas of my life, that if I can change that process and go back to what I learned a little bit from the five love languages, and how I process things and how I look at things, and change it from the me set to the people out here or the other things in life, put my focus back where it belongs, I can change that mindset there too, and change that part of me also. So it's another way of reframing things and, looking at things. And that's where I went to, because it seems like a lot of the books that we go through tend to kind of tie in and work with each other. And it's interesting to see the connections, how, on one chapter, this book might tie in, like, Wayne Dyer's Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life, things like that, or Think and Grow Rich in some areas, or things like that. It's just interesting to learn how many of these concepts intertwine and work together. It's just putting all those pieces together to help bring us to our best selves that we can put for us to make us feel centered and comfortable, but also to help put out what we want to put out to others too. I'm done.
Yeah, I was waiting to see if Catherine wanted to jump out and say something. It's my anticipation face. Okay. Oh, I'll another one that that we haven't read, but Catherine, you've talked about a lot, is author Byron Katie, and she asks the questions of to help you examine the thoughts that are going on in your head, and because we get ourselves all worked up about these things, and then we just cause the situation to be worse. And Catherine, I can't always remember what the questions are. I have the children's book, the Tiger Tiger Is It True book, but I think the adult questions are probably more important for us. Can you remind us?
I'm not sure if I remember either. Is it true? Is it absolutely true? Something about even if it's true, does it matter? That's not what it is, but like,
Let me go grab the children's book, and maybe that'll.
yeah, they're the same questions.
But I like the two that you just even said, Catherine, that when you look at things, and you ask those two questions, is it, really true, or does it really matter? In the big scheme of things, if you ask those two questions and even lay it just there, you can usually help, change the thoughts and look at it for what it is, and kind of help stabilize where you're at and get yourself out of that mindset. And I think that's a good way of looking at it. And in the big scope of things, does it really matter? Is it really that big of a deal? I think we all tend to blow things way out of proportion. And I'm going to say it this way: we get butt hurt because it's not going the way we want it to go, or that we, are expecting it to go, or thinking the way it should go. And because we are interacting with other people and they have their lives, their choices, the things they do. And so then we just turn around and kind of, just take it totally personally, when a lot of times they're not even personally meant towards us. And I think that's another way that we let things get to us too.
Okay, I found the book. And at the beginning, she does have these questions in here in a note from Byron Katie, and it says the 4 questions and the turnaround. And of course, the turnaround is what she's saying, to turn these thoughts around. So number 1 is it true? Is it absolutely true? So if whatever the thing is just, is this just an opinion, or is it true? Can you absolutely know that it's true? Number 3, how do you react? What happens when you believe that thought? So if you're sitting here telling yourself, like my previous example of, I'm never going to be able to see my daughter again, or I'm never going to see my grandchildren grow up. Is that true? No, it's not true. But if I still kept thinking it, I could be like, can I absolutely know that that's true? Well, there's no way I can know for sure if I'm going to be able to see them again. So that's not absolutely true. And how do I react? What happens when I believe that thought? When I believe that thought that I'm never going to be able to see my daughter again, I get mad, I get angry, I get frustrated, I get anxious, I get anxiety. Anxious and anxiety, it's the same thing, but anyway. And then who would I be without that thought? So if I didn't have that thought, then I wouldn't be emotionally a wreck, right? I wouldn't feel that. I wouldn't feel those emotions. I would just be neutral, right? But then it says turn it around and find at least 3 specific genuine examples of how the turnaround is true in your life. And so then it talks, it was like when I made those different sentences and told myself something completely different, then it turned everything around, and it changed my whole attitude about that situation. And now we have just a completely different experience. And so that's what it's talking about here, is that like, and and I've started doing this every time that an emotion that I don't like comes up, as I start thinking, okay, what am I telling myself that's causing this emotion? And I can give you another example, and this one goes right around the lines of what we're talking about in this book. This, the scarcity, the financial, et cetera, the doom and gloom attitude. So, so this week we've been working on buying another truck for our business, and and our credit is less than perfect. It's been we've been improving it over the past year, and I'm like, okay, we ought to be at a good spot where we can, easily get financing, right? And and so, one thing that's been happening is we've got these lenders that are like, we don't want to do business with you, and I'm like, oh no, so I start thinking, oh God, what's going to happen? And, and we can't get this truck, and we can't grow the business, and I'm going to be stuck in this other job that I don't like as much, and so those are the thoughts that are coming up in my head. Right. And so then, one thing that happens each time this year is that the company that we do business with sends out this contract for us to read through and send it back to them. And then we send this documentation that needs to go with it, with insurance and DOT authorization and all that kind of thing. And I was waiting on one particular piece of paperwork that I needed to get from the state of Indiana that I didn't realize had expired. And I was supposed to renew it in September, and so I hadn't. So I'm waiting on this paper. My husband messages me at work, and he's like, hey, did you send off the contract and documentation? And this one guy that works at the company is kind of a snake. And he was trying to get with my husband. And anyway, so he messages me, my husband does, and asks me about this, and I'm like, oh shit, I haven't gotten that off yet. That guy, he's gonna try and kick us out of this business. We're gonna lose all our possible income. These are the thoughts that are coming up in my head. Oh God, I didn't renew that thing when I was supposed to, and I've ruined this all for us, and we're trying to finance this truck, etc. And so all these thoughts started rolling through my head, and and then I was like, oh, then we'll get the truck, and then we won't have work, and then it, really gonna go back to everything's gonna fall apart. And then my whole brain process just started going down and down and down and down. And I had myself so worked up over it that I ended up with, my stomach was hurting, my back was hurting. I was like, I was getting a headache. I was just emotionally a complete wreck. And of course, after I was already in this tumult, I realized what I was doing to myself. And, and I took my break at work, and I went and I sat down, and I started just saying, these aren't true. These aren't true thoughts. This isn't real. This is all just a mumbo jumbo that you're telling yourself. You're just getting yourself worked up. Let's just sit here and clear away all those thoughts, So I took a minute. I just cleared the thoughts, and every time they would pop back up in there, I'd be like, no, that's not true. This is what's really happening, and I just started reorganizing my thoughts and let go of all that anxious anxiety, fear, all of it. And then when I was on my way home, I listened to this one audio that is just like, it's kind of like a meditation audio. I know they say don't listen to this while you're driving, but I didn't have my eyes closed. I just let it go in the background because it's like peaceful water and, trickling and that kind of thing. And it, it helped me just calm all those freaking crazy thoughts and and help me just get things back under control. And once I was able to do that, I got home and I told my husband what happened. And he just, he gave me a big hug, and he's like, I know, I was having some of the same thoughts. And I'm like, okay, all right, we're okay, you know. And then and he's like, no, that guy, he was just messing with me. He doesn't have anything to do with anything. And anyway, so once I got all that crap going on the whole conversation going on in my head under control, you know, I was able to get out of that space and get back into a happy one again. And you know, I can't. She talks about a bunch of stories in here that are basically the same thing. You know, the conversations, the things that were happening around the financial crisis that happened a number of years ago, and when 9/11 hit, and you know, and all those things, and every time that the conversation was about positive and all of that, then everybody's feeling positive. When everything the conversation is about negative, everybody's feeling fearful, and that and you know all of that. And that's like such a huge thing. I mean, we don't even realize how much we do this to ourselves. I bet in a matter of one period. You want to jump out there, Dan. I could probably talk on and on
I,
for a while.
well, I'm like you. I could go forever when I get talking, but a good point, like the 9/11 thing and stuff, where she talked about the World Trade Centers and the 9/11 and stuff, and how people responded and stuff in like openness, caring, trying to do whatever they could. I kind of like the same response I saw here in Las Vegas when we had the shooting there on September 1st, 2017. I mean, October 1st, 2017. Our community responded. Everybody just was there and helping. But the one thing we didn't have happen was we didn't have what happened after the 9/11 attacks, where the same thing kind of happened. But then the feds and the economists and everything kind of started to say, oh well, the economy might they were talking about the financial crisis like in 2003 or something. That's what it was. And how the markets were going down, people lost lots of money, and she even said that her and her husband had built up some money in their stocks and stuff. And at first they were caught up in the worry and the stuff, but then, like she said, she started looking at it and changed her thought process to going back to the other things that mattered in life: the family, the friends, the people, where their other resources were, and looking at those and putting more of the energy there. And she was likening it to the 9/11 attacks, where right afterwards everybody was doing opening, trying to help, consort, see where they could help, where they could put their energies and stuff. But then President Bush came out and said something about the economy and stuff, and we need to, show the countries that did the attacks that they didn't hurt us, or we need to buy American, do this, do that. So we changed our whole mindset as a country of nurturing, caring, building each other up to this consumerism thing, and took the whole mindset shifted. And how even that can play out in a country under the right circumstances, where the right people in the right places can have a huge effect on where energy gets put. So that's another thing, is when those things like come up, you got to be really able to look at it and go back to, like you said, the Byron Katie thing. Is it really true? Does it really matter? Is if so, there's 4 questions, and put yourself where you need to be in those type respects. And I was a great spot that she brought that out, where it can happen individually, group, but it can happen nationally, in a whole country. And I thought that was really powerful when I saw that. I'm like, wow, 'cause I didn't even really realize that had happened, but it did.
Yeah, I didn't really realize it in that. I didn't look at it in that same aspect either. I just was going right along with it. Yeah, they haven't beat us up. Let's get back to business. We're not getting down. And you know, and you can look at that from different perspectives. I mean, she was kind of portraying that as all, I mean, not so great, because she's trying to change our whole thought process on money. But yet at the same time, I mean, that is the U.S. economy, and if we aren't being consumers, then I mean, that's where a good portion of, I mean, that's where everything comes from. And I would like to see some changes in where how money is allocated. That could be the direction, I mean, with all of this consumerism, it'd be nice if we could, reallocate some of our tax money towards better things instead of just, the military and all that mumbo jumbo. But, I mean, that I've just got to go out there and hopefully find political leaders that are going to be better focused and be voting for them, So that's why I keep watching for somebody decent to pop up. And, even when somebody has the right attitude about some things, it's other things, not so much. And then I'm like, just please get one person who works in all good ways instead of just only two, So jump out.
To us as individuals, where we can be maybe part of that stepping stone process, but also within our own lives. It shows how powerful we are within our own lives, and how make those changes in our own lives, and then hopefully maybe it affects somebody else that we care about and that we are in connection with, and that we can help open their minds and their eyes to you know how they, for lack of a better word, because we do it to ourselves. We beat ourselves up with our minds and our thoughts, and what we say to ourselves, and open up the dialogue there. And you know and especially around money, I think, like she says in this book, in this country, we do really have a certain overall mindset about. I'm not saying everybody in individually, but in as a country, I think we do have an overall mindset about certain thoughts about money. And because you always hear, well, I got to keep up with the Joneses, I got to have what they have, I got to be where they're at. And it's like no, I really have really gotten to the point where I don't need a huge big super big huge house. you know I'm happy, I'm content, I love it. I don't need that. Do I need a brand new car all the time? No. My car is just fine. Learning to look at things and put the emphasis and the priority and change my thoughts out of those things, because trying to keep up with the Joneses puts me in that scarcity mode and the me against you mindset that she talks about, and instead of the you and me, where I open myself up and say, okay, I'm content with this. Let me put my money and my energies elsewhere into things that are producing positive things that I agree with, like spending my money with companies that agree with the same thought processes and things I do, going out and supporting the things that I believe in, and volunteering or being a part of those things like I do, once a month through things I'm involved in, things like that. And I think that's what she's hoping to work towards, and changing our thoughts, but changing it, wrapping it around money. Because if we don't wrap it around money, money is the one thing that always seems to trip us up in every other area of our life.
Yeah, I think you're right. That whole money seems to trip us up, and it just amazes me, really, how that's just the conversation in my own head about money. It's like, when we were living in our camper and had, very minimal money coming in, very minimal money in our bank, and I was at peace in my life, but I always had this money conversation going on in my head of, oh my God, how am I going to pay my camp rental, and how am I going to pay my electric bill, even though they were like minuscule compared to what they were, years back. And then, here we are, move forward a few years. Well, shoot, I'll say even forward just a tiny bit after that. When we moved back to Indiana, we were living with my dad. We went and moved in with him for about 6 months, just to transition from being in a camper to being back in, a house again. And and even for those 6 months when I was working a job and we were starting the trucking company, my husband was doing that, we had some money coming in, I still had these freaking thoughts of how am I going to pay my bills, how am I going to this, what am I going to do, and I'm like, I had, and I look back on it and I'm like, my God, you didn't have any freaking bills, why are you freaking out? I mean, obviously we had some because of the trucking company and whatnot, and I bought a car, etc. Anyway, but it boggled my mind, and then now this year, we've got a little bit more going on. I've got a little bit more money in the savings account, and we're fairly comfortable, even though we have some precarious things going on. And I'm still have those thoughts, still the same freaking thoughts, no matter where we are financially. I can look back in my 15 years ago when I had my pet grooming business, when we had our trucking company and everything before the financial crisis, and everything was going along happy-go-lucky. And, the same conversation in my head. And, and even though in the past couple of years since we've been doing our Saturday mastermind, all the different things that we have studied and all the work that I've done on my own thoughts and the things that I've learned and the experiences that I've had with changing those conversations in my head, still this is something that I still struggle with. And it boggles my mind. It's kind of like exercise, it just total other subject, but it like exercise. Okay. I start exercising and I feel better. I feel great. I start having more energy. I start this, I start that, and then all of a sudden I just, I stop because God only knows why. Whether it's self-sabotage, whether it is just getting bored with it, who knows? I stop. And then I start feeling crappy again, and I feel, I gain a little bit of weight and this and that. And then I start feeling bad about it. And and the answer is obvious. What I need to do is just start exercising again and I'll feel better. But my ding dong brain just doesn't want to cooperate, right? I don't know. I know what to do. And when we're talking about the book, The Slight Edge by Jeff Olson, he says it's those little things every single day that we do that creates the success, right? Or creates the change. And we know what they are. We just have to keep doing them. And, but for whatever reason, it's just like all this little mind chatter, the monkey brain is so ingrained that even when we're examining it regularly, changing the conversation in our head, working on those thoughts is still, but I don't know, maybe because we keep working and we keep working and we keep doing, we keep recognizing that, like he says in The Slight Edge, eventually we'll get out of that crap. I mean, I'm better than I was years ago by far. And I recognize these things much faster. So like when I was going through my emotional insanity the other day, I got myself so worked up, I came out of it much faster than what I ever had before. And, it used to be I'd get myself all anxious and I'd be anxious for, weeks and months. And then, over the years, it was a little bit less. Maybe it was just a week, then a little bit further along, then it was maybe just a couple of days. And now I'm down to, okay, it was less than 24 hours and I was back out of it. And, so, I mean, I know that it works. I know what I need to do. And I can recognize these, the pain. What is the thing? I don't know. There's something, it's like, you stick your finger on the hot burner. If it burns, you take it off, right? And if I keep experiencing this discomfort, I don't want to just keep experiencing it. So I got to do something to take it off, right? So, and that's what we keep doing, and that's what we're working on. And I'm learning more and more what the things are that hurt. And so I am working on changing it so I don't hurt anymore. I'm not hurting myself anymore. Quit beating yourself in the head. All you got to do is stop, right?
Well, I was going to jump out and say, it's interesting because, like, for me, I'm like you. I keep going through a lot of the same steps, but each time and it's funny that you brought up the slight edge because I have the slight edge over in my little book reading thing where I can sit and read and have it on in my lap area and read it. But have I finished that book? No, I keep getting reminded about it. Oh, let me go back and and I always get to about the same point, and then kind of this comes up, that comes up, and then I get, and it's like, no, I need to finish that book because, like you said, he really does hit, doing the little things consistently over time, all the time. And as I've learned, usually if you do something about 21 days or 3 to 4 weeks, it tends to become that habit. And I've proven that to myself with making my bed in the morning. Because now when I wake up, no, I got to make my bed. At least make it, you know, even if it's not perfectly made, but in my say, okay, it's made. You know, that I'm satisfied. But now it's become ingrained in me that no, once I get up and I'm up and doing, I want to make that before I leave for the day. But it was one of those things I had to set that intention. And by, realizing all these, like you said, the pain points that are hot, like with kids, you kind of warn them and then you kind of watch them, hopefully, and let them experience it for the first time. And then they learn that, oh, hot, that hurts. You don't do that anymore. Well, why do we keep doing the, ow, it's hot, and keep going back? And, it doesn't make sense, but yet we do it and we do it and we do it. And that's all because of, I think, because of the environments we're in and the way the world is in general, that we see a lot of that out there. And that's why I love coming to this mastermind every Saturday, is because it kind of gives me a plugging in and reminding myself, and like, okay, well, one, I'm not alone, but two, I have a group of people that are trying to do the same thing. We're trying to change ourselves for the better and make ourselves better and do it together, so that way we don't feel alone. But at the same point, we're all in different levels and walks. And that's why I love when Catherine shares a lot of her, thoughts and feelings about things, because I feel in some ways she's so much more enlightened than I am on certain areas and certain things. Throws things out there, and I'm like, oh wow, yeah, I never thought of it that way. Or she brings some other insight that I don't learn, or that I haven't heard, or something like that. And things from other members on the panels and stuff, it's like, oh wow, why didn't I think of that, or those things? And it kind of infuses me and helps give me that grounding I need back to go back to, like, okay, I need to rework this and rethink this and change my process along with all the books that we've done. So I know I'm getting better. I made changes, but I still have a long way to go too. And that's why I want to keep on this journey and keep doing those things, because I get true value out of it. And I feel like I'm learning and growing so much more about myself and how to interact out there in the world in a better way and give out what I want to give out to people and edify them and build them up, and hopefully help them see, their value, their purpose, that there's more to do too. So I think that's, something, I'm getting from all the books and, things, and piecing them together like a puzzle to build me to being that person I want to be, but to help, others see, what they want to be too.
I think it's just, as far as overcoming thoughts, I think that it's a daily practice, it's an hourly practice, it's a minute by minute practice. I don't think you ever get there where you don't have those self-sabotaging thoughts anymore. And the reason for that, I think, is because it is not our consciousness, it is human consciousness. So even if we were to get all our shit together, the next door neighbor might be having financial issues. They're over there beating themselves up over, and I think that we pick up on that. Like, because you can have yourself completely straight, completely, you've read 2,000 books on self-development. You've practiced every one of them. You've taken it all seriously. your head is straight, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, some shit just comes and whacks you, and you torture yourself for the next 3 days over it. And so I think that it's just something that you have to renew constantly. And it does get easier. Like you said, Samantha, it gets quicker. I mean, you get to where you can shift yourself within a matter of minutes. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't happen. Like, you still have to do it. You still have to do it. And I love Byron Katie. I still love Byron Katie. And even though I couldn't remember questions, I use them in my head to shift myself all the time. Especially that isn't true, because half the stuff we tell ourselves is not true. More than half, I would say. Because our mind and the human consciousness and other people experiencing it blows it up into a bigger situation than what it really is on a personal level. But I think we feel it from a species level almost. And that blows it into huge, major proportions, and makes it seem like the whole world is ending. And of course, the whole world isn't ending over one person's situation. That's why I think it has to be more of a collective consciousness situation. It's challenging at times, and it's a mind fuck, for lack of a better word, because you just have to make up your mind that something is going to be different. It is all perception. It's just like, if you guys remember in the movie The Matrix, there's a point where, they feel like they can't beat the agents. They call them the agents, and they feel like they can't beat the agents, that you just have to run from the agents. That's the only way to survive. You have to run from the agents. And then there's this one point where Neo they're all shooting at him. There's like 3 agents shooting at him, and he turns around, he looks at him, and he's like, no. And he stops the bullets in midair. And that's basically where you have to go every day with your life, I think. When all those thoughts are the bullets coming at you, And at some point, you just have to turn around and look at them and say, no. Just stop that shit, because it will kill you. Your own thoughts can kill you. If you believe you're going to die, you will kill yourself. That's why they tell people, when you go through nursing school or med school or whatever, by the time you get through, you're going to think that you've had every disease on the face of the earth. Because when you start studying about these things and you see all the different symptoms, all of a sudden you start having the symptoms. Like, we create this stuff, you guys. And so I try to keep that picture of Neo in my mind, when I start the self-sabotage, and I just turn to those thoughts and I just say, no. I just stop those thoughts, because most of it isn't true. A lot of it is coming from somewhere else. I don't know where. Maybe even other planets, maybe even other universes. Maybe we don't just share a collective consciousness on this planet. Maybe we share a collective consciousness amongst many universes. We don't know. So the point is to take control of it. Because if you don't, it will take you in a downward spiral that will have health effects. Just like you said, Samantha, your back was hurting, your head was hurting. It will physically make you ill. And you can't just pretend like the thoughts aren't there. You have to take an active counter stance to them. And reading books like this, the fact that they all agree should comfort us in some ways, right? All the books that we've read, they pretty much all agree with each other. There's a reason for that. Love you guys. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, I think that they're all kind of trying to say the same thing, and because maybe we don't hear it when it's said one way, and then we do hear it when it's said another way, And maybe we hear it in one way, but then we don't know how to fix it until we read it in another book and it gives us an example that makes sense to us. And and I'm really thankful that we have these books so that we can learn these things and that we can talk about it so that we can share our own perspective and help each other learn more. And I wanted to just go ahead and and before we wrap up for today, but Dan, if you want to share your final thoughts before I read this, I was going to read a little section in here and to just wrap up the conversation.
It's funny, I know your thoughts because I know the section that you're going to read because I wanted to read it too. But I'll share my thoughts. It's interesting what Catherine said because I posted in the little chat section about her analogy with the Matrix thought, and wow, what a powerful picture it painted for me. Like I said, her little nuggets of wisdom. I love those things because wow, that me being more of a visual person. Um, I could actually picture him saying, doing that and stopping those bullets, and it to me it represented the power of ourselves that we forget that we have to take those thoughts captive, so to speak, and say, like she says, no, are they, is it real? Is it true? Is it, really, does it really have a material effect on anything? And when we do that, that's where we take the power rather than giving it the power, and we can change and take, you know. But the other part I wanted to add on that is this, besides all the books, I think like you said, the points you made about the books and how reading it one way, but reading another one or hearing or something, I get more from the reading, but along with our meeting like this and doing and talking about it, because then I get the interaction and the points of views and things that people gone through, and I can say, oh, I've gone through similar, I've done that, I felt, like, okay, you know wow, I like the example of what they did. Okay, I can do those things too, and it puts it into a more personal way. And so that's why I like doing the books along with us here, because it gives me the connectivity of it and connection, and seeing that it really is something that everybody struggles with, and that somebody else, by the steps they took, had power to make some changes. Okay, I can take those types of same steps too, and believe that it'll work because it did work for somebody else. Sometimes I read a book and sometimes I say, oh, they're just saying that in the book just to get people to, I mean, if you kind of follow my thought process, you know, and, until I hear somebody else saying, oh, I did those steps, I followed those steps, then I'm like, oh, okay, there's, validity there. And so that's why I like, how we do this. And then, and like I said, I generally love Catherine's nuggets that she throws out because I just like, oh, wow. And it, helps me, you know, for me. So that's, what I got out of it. But I think, I do think I know the section you're going to read, though, Samantha.
Well, my apologies.
She couldn't decide if she was getting them on my lap or she's trying to tell us something, or she's going to tell Papa Chris. So, I don't know if we're talking about the same section or not. I'm looking in the section that says conversation creates the context of life. Is that what you're looking at, Dan? Because if not, you can read what you were looking at. Were you talking about the things at the end of the chapter?
I'm talking about the thing towards the end, but I'll go ahead and read it. I really thought you were going there, but darn it, I was wrong.
That's okay.
It says money is like water. It can be a conduit for commitment, a currency of love. Money moving in the direction of our highest commitments nourishes us. What you appreciate appreciates. When you make a difference with what you have, it expands. Collaboration creates prosperity. True abundance flows from enough, never from more. Money carries our intention. If we use it with integrity, then it carries integrity forward. Know the flow. Take responsibility for the way your money moves in the world. Let your soul and your money express your soul. Access your assets, not only money, but also your own character and capabilities, your relationships, and other non-money resources. And I think that's a powerful way of saying how, when we do all the things we've been talking about, how we can then turn the money into the resources that we really have always wanted it to be. And we will, if we go with the enough, the oh, I can't think of the word she uses, but the resources of, not scarcity, but the other word. I can't think of it.
Efficiency.
Yeah, sufficiency. We can move forward, and somehow we do move forward. And that's the thing that I've learned in some cases, when I change my thought process and realize that I do have enough. Somehow things flow and go better, and I move forward. So that's what I wanted to share.
Thanks for reading that, Dan, because I had forgotten about those sentences at the end of the chapter. And when you said you thought that you knew what I was going to read, I was like, oh, wait, there's probably something else. I underlined like half of this chapter. But okay, I just want to reiterate. Part of what I'm going to read is what we said at the beginning, but there's more to it. So she says, well, first, this little section is entitled Conversation Creates the Context of Life. We think we live in the world. We think we live in a set of circumstances, but we don't. We live in our conversation about the world and our conversation about the circumstances. When we're in a conversation about fear and terror, about revenge and anger and retribution, jealousy and envy and comparison, then that is the world we inhabit. If we're in a conversation about possibility, a conversation about gratitude and appreciation for the things in front of us, then that's the world we inhabit. And she goes on to say, the conversation we have with ourselves and with others, the thoughts that grip our attention, has enormous power over how we feel, what we experience, and how we see the world in that moment. She says scarcity speaks in terms of never enough, emptiness, fear, mistrust, envy, greed, hoarding, competition, fragmentation, separateness, judgment, striving, entitlement, control, busy, survival, outer riches. And then sufficiency speaks in terms of gratitude, fulfillment, love, trust, respect, contributing, faith, compassion, integration, wholeness, commitment, acceptance, partnership, responsibility, resilience, and inner riches. In the conversation for sufficiency, we acknowledge what is, appreciate its value, and envision how we make a difference with it. We recognize, affirm, and embrace. We celebrate quality over quantity. We center ourselves in integrity, possibility, and resourcefulness. We define our money with our energy and intention. And at the very end of the chapter, she reminds us we each have the power to shift, change, and create the conversation that shapes our circumstances. The levers and dials of conversation are ours to use. When we listen, speak, and respond from the context of sufficiency, we access a new freedom and power in our relationship with money and in life. And I wanted to read those so that we could really understand, the differences in, between the two things that we have the possibility to think about. All these different things when we're talking about fear, emptiness, mistrust, or we're talking about gratitude, fulfillment, and love. And that when we can shift our thoughts and shift those sentences and conversations, the things that we're saying ourselves, to the ones of not only sufficiency, but gratitude, appreciation, love, then we create just a better emotional feeling inside of ourselves. And when we have a better emotional feeling, we walk through life with a better attitude and a better way of doing things. And we are more positive with the people that we interact with, and we're more positive with where we spend our money. And I mean, it's just everything. It flows into everything. And it creates the context of our life. And so we just need to choose, do we want to have a cranky, angry, disappointed, frustrated, fearful life? Or do we want to have a positive, energetic, happy, gratitude, fulfilled life? We get to choose which do we want to experience, because we create our own experience. So that's what I wanted to just kind of wrap ourselves up with. And those things that you talked about at the end of the chapter also are good for review. And I'm glad that you read those, Dan, because those can help us as well. And for anybody who is watching this, you know, let me just remind you, this is the book we're reading, The Soul of Money by Lynne Twist. And that was chapter 10 that we were talking about. And even though we kind of talked mostly about our own lives and own circumstances, this chapter is huge. This is like the key chapter, in my opinion. It's just all the stuff that we say to ourselves is what creates our lives. So that's what we got to work on. So with that, guys, this has been a great chat, and I love getting together with you, Dan and Catherine. And for anybody who's watching, if you liked what we talked about here today, click like below this video. Share the video with anybody you think that it might help, and comment below. Tell us what you think. You know, what experiences you've had with, you know, in your life, and the conversations that are going on in your head. And you know, jump over into our Facebook group if you'd like to connect with us more or participate in this conversation next time. You can find us at mindsetmasterycollective.com. That's a link that takes you directly into our Facebook group. So with that, guys, have a great, awesome, amazing week, and we'll see you next time on the Saturday Morning Mastermind. Bye for now.